This is Annie Grace, and you're listening to This Naked Mind podcast, where without judgment, pain, or rules, we explore the role of alcohol in our lives and culture. Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Grace, and this is the Naked Mind podcast with Annie Grace, and I am here today with Michelle. And Michelle has graciously decided to come on and share her story, and I'm so excited. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
So, Michelle, let's just dive into this. What was your life like really kind of before you started to question your drinking? What were you doing? Who are you, Michelle? Like, where were you in life?
Okay.
What was happening?
I was married for about 15 years, and my ex-husband at the time was a recovering alcoholic. And when I met him, he was. So we never drank at all, and I never drank growing up, not needing it in college or participated in it in any way. And so when I was married to him, we just never drank. And then towards the end of my marriage, I lost a lot of weight. I lost about 65 pounds. And so I didn't drink then as well. But when I did choose to go outside the boundaries of losing weight, I did drink some alcohol. And I was very familiar with portion control. So I would literally measure out 2 ounces of alcohol. And that would be a weekly treat if I let myself have those 2 ounces. Well, then I
Wow.
got divorced very suddenly. I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years and hadn't had a career in 10 years. And then I found myself with no home, no career, 2 kids on my own. So I quickly established a new career, but with single parenting, it started slowly, and I didn't have a husband around who didn't. So I was on my own. So I made my own decisions, my own choices. And with that, being single, I started to date a lot. And every single date required you to go meet someone for drinks. And it just became the norm. And then every day after work, it got more and more stressful as the years went on and my kids got older, that it just became where in the evenings I would drink. And so I remember measuring out 2 ounces and sipping on it and feeling like I was, doing something naughty, and I would get a buzz off of 2 ounces. And then come now, I would be drinking in the summer every single day. My kids go to their dad's house for a month in the summer, and I became lonely. And I would exercise, I would eat healthy, but I always drank. And it was progressive and progressive. And I didn't know how to have a relationship with anybody else besides the alcohol, truthfully. The more I drank, the more I became isolated.
Yeah, it's so isolating. It's incredibly isolating. And it's so funny with the knowledge that, we kind of have now to be like, oh, well, of course it was progressive because you were building a tolerance because your body was like fighting off this poison and building an immunity and protecting itself, right? But in the throes of it, like that would never even kind of cross your mind. Like you wouldn't have any idea what was happening. So let's talk about where did sort of the cognitive dissonance start for you? Like where did this questioning start to happen? And was there anything major or was it just kind of a minor or how would that happen?
Okay, I'll be truthful. I was very great about eating well, exercising. I'm great at parenting. I enjoy my job. Um, but I kept being very sexually active with people when I would go on dates with them. And that was always because I was drinking. And after 2 years of calling my counselor and saying, look, I think I'm addicted to sex, which really wasn't the case. It was that I started drinking so much that every time I went out with someone, that was my go-to. I would drink and have sex and then feel guilty. And I was really just sick of it. I was sick of waking up the next day and beating myself up. I was sick of questioning how many drinks I've had, who I'm with. Um, I only have so much amount of spare space in my head. And it was going every night to the drinking. And then when in the morning would come, it would go to the drinking. And then I knew I was in trouble when I was looking forward to it every single day. When no one is around and no one's paying attention to what I'm doing, no one was there to question what I was doing. But I knew deep down inside something was not sitting right with me. And so I realized for the sex part, that wasn't healthy for it to clear up. In order for that to clear up, I had to let go of the drinking because that was the catalyst I used to make that okay.
Right.
And so I was so tired of saying, I'm exercising, I'm working out, but at the end of the day, when my kids are sitting on the couch, I was sneaking drinks that were clear so they wouldn't see me do it. And a catalyst came also, or what really made a difference for me too is I realized after reading your book that I was always telling my kids not to do something, but I was doing it. I was telling them not to have sex before they're married or telling them to be safe, and I wasn't. I'm telling my 16-year-old not to drink, and this is the reasons you shouldn't drink, but at the same time he sees me drinking. And so I really felt, to be an honorable parent, I sat down with him when they came back from their dad's last summer, and I said, look, something's changed. I have decided not to drink anymore, and as a parent, I want to tell you, as a parent, I screw up a lot, and this is something I don't want to screw up on. I don't want to be the parent who tells you it's okay to do this, because it's really not. It doesn't make it okay for me just because I'm a certain age. So I told my kids I've removed it from the house and I won't be drinking anymore. And so making that decision and then having my children, I'm accountable to them as well. It makes a big difference for me.
Right, right. And I think that's so interesting what you say. I mean, um, so I recently had a baby, and I remember being warned about not putting like my cell phone near my stomach. And it was kind of like one of those things. Well, okay, you're not supposed to drink alcohol when you're pregnant, um,
Mhm.
because it's bad, and you're not supposed to. And I'm like, oh, the cell phone, like, why are these things that you can't do pregnant okay to do to your human body when you're not
Right,
pregnant?
right,
How does that make a lot of sense? But
right.
okay, very cool. So when did things, I mean, where'd you find the book? Just curious.
Okay, I found this is what I did. I see a counselor regularly because I really want to maintain my mental health
Right.
and going through being a successful mom, single mom. And I one day I've texted her after a one night stand, and I said I need to find a hypnotist to hypnotize me to not drink anymore, because I had tried and tried and tried, and it just, the white knuckling it got to where I just felt failure. But I knew that the brain had to react differently, because I'm very well aware of the cognitive thinking when it comes to eating. I
Right.
don't have sugar in my house. My family knows we don't do it, and I've maintained a weight loss for 5, 6 years because that switch has changed. So I knew in my mind something wasn't clicking. So when she had no recommendations for hypnotherapists, and I literally just Googled how to stop drinking, and your book came up. One of the key things I did is I read your book. I studied it like my life depended on it. And I didn't just stop at that. I went to the next book after that, and I went to the next book after that. And I'm getting emotional, but it just clicked, it just clicked. And, I just realized my life depended on it. And in my family, I'm the only one who eats healthy. So it's very difficult. And now I'm the only one who chooses not to drink, which is difficult also. But I have to do the right thing, and I know how it feels to do the right thing. And so this was just the next step in my, becoming an adult. It's about time. I had to grow up. It's not pretty when you're 40 years old and you have a one night stand. I mean, it's just not. And I still study it. I still make a conscious effort, like I do exercise every day, to focus on the alcohol. I was able to make that switch, but I don't take it for granted. I
Right.
don't let it stop, honestly. It's like when you're a teacher, you have to continue your education. That's just part of the deal. And so, I stopped doing things that were numbing me out, and I focused on learning and learning and learning who I am and what I could be. And so, um, after stopping drinking, I knew I could do like a juice challenge or a juice cleanse, because it was a matter of changing my mind. I stuck with it, and I'm going to do it. And, honestly, if I hadn't had some weight loss success or success in other areas, the destructive part of your mind tells you just can't do it.
Right.
But that's what wasn't working, is listening to that part of your mind. So, I fought for all I was worth. And I haven't been drinking that long, honestly, but the progression was 2 ounces to 16 ounces of
Right.
hard liquor. No one saw, no one knew, but I woke up hating myself.
Right.
And I don't want to wake up feeling that way. And, I'm not a good mom, teacher, whoever, with the drinking. I really wasn't.
Well,
So I kept quiet. I still don't have a large group of friends because it's just not necessary for me at this time. and a lot of people choose to go out and be social, and I don't find that fun anymore. So, but I'm totally at peace with it. I'm okay with it.
What I love about you, Michelle, like you own your life. It's really
Oh,
inspiring to see, and just seeing you, you're glowing, you're excited,
thank you.
you've taken control in like every aspect of the word. And so many things you say resonate. And I got emotional too because, the kids, right? Like I
Yeah.
remember how it felt to be trapped doing something I don't want to be doing. That feeling is not a feeling I ever want for my children. And I think of it with,
Yes.
I have two boys, and I think of it with like porn addictions, or I think of it with, any
Right.
type of addiction. Like I never want them to be trapped in something that makes them hate themselves. And so like what can we do? And just like good for you. Like wow, to have
You know,
just owned it.
I
Like that
feel
just is so awesome.
thanks. I feel being very vulnerable to my children is the key.
Yeah.
I grew up and my mom had was the stay-at-home mom, and I didn't I never, they didn't fight in front of us. They didn't do things in front of us. So I didn't see how people handled situations. So I'm very vulnerable with my children, and I know that I want them to be able to see me struggle with things. I keep my alcohol books out so my 15-year-old who loves to read will pick it up.
Right.
I keep my when I talked about my children with porn or whatever those things, I tell them that as a woman, I've struggled with that too. I've struggled, and you will struggle. That's what I love about being a high school teacher is that these kids are just, I love this age. They're so impressionable. But at the same time, I can't be telling them not to do things and then doing it myself.
Right.
I have to expose myself constantly because I have no one to be accountable for. I'm not married. No one sees. One of the things I did when I got instantly divorced is I had no career. I became a lunch lady at my kid's school. I mean,
Oh,
it was
that's cool.
very humbling to have college education because I had to start somewhere,
Right.
and I didn't tell people I was college educated, but I needed to be with my children to see them. And now I teach culinary because I have a food background and everything, but there has to become a time in your life where you are humbled to the fact that I just don't have it all figured out. And I still don't. I mean, I still constantly pull things up to reflect on them. And I thought when I would be this age, I'd have it all figured out, honestly, but I
Well,
don't.
oh yeah. I thought, oh yeah, when I'm gonna turn 39 in just about a week, and yeah, I thought whatever, but it's all a journey, and it's so beautiful in its own kind of messy way. One of the things
Right.
you said that also just strikes me is that idea of kind of teachers and continuing education. And um, the reality is, if you and I could just like have this mindset shift and realize these truths about alcohol, and then go and live in a cabin somewhere in the mountains where the culture wasn't around us, it would be
Right.
easy. But look
Right.
at the truth. Like you are going to go home, I am going to go home, and just today we are going to see dozens and dozens and dozens of pro drinking messages that are going to hit us consciously, hit us subconsciously. And then you think about the high schoolers you're teaching, or your children, or my children. And, I mean, in the UK, it's not even legal to advertise alcohol, but in the US, it's
Right.
the most frustrating thing about watching football, because it's every other commercial is,
Right.
and it's these people who are doing all this fitness but drinking Michelob Ultra, and that's cool because
Yes.
it's low calorie or whatever, and we're just inundated with it. And as much as I want to say like let's shift it and let's change the culture, like yes, let's do that, but also let's be really realistic about this culture we're in. And I think you nailed it. I mean, it's about being constantly kind of mindful, because you're right. I mean, life depends on it. Like there's nothing in the US that kills more people than alcohol in terms of a choice. Like, so sure,
Right.
there's other causes of death, but in terms of a preventable cause of death that we do to ourselves, alcohol is 4 times the opiate epidemic, and the opiate epidemic is going sky high. So, yeah. So what are some of the things that you kind of do to just constantly keep that continuing education going?
I talk to others online. I just research, I read, I pull
Mm,
it out again and read it if I need to. And this is with really other things in my life as well. If I feel like I'm struggling with food, I'll just take some time to focus and read something that'll make me feel good, or a new focus. What works for me today may not work for me
right.
tomorrow. So I feel like it's up to me to pick up the needle on the record player and put it back where I need to start all over again. And if that requires me to do it 5 times today, then I'm just going to have to do it 5 times today. But if it stays for a week and I'm on the same, crease, then that's fine too. But I feel like uh, uh, what's important to me is me stopping and being able to say, I'm just going to have to start this all over again, because I just don't have it all figured out. But I know that I've made the decision to, and I'm going to stick with it. And I'm the only one fighting for myself. I have to, and it was killing me. I wasn't going anywhere, but that was the point. I wasn't going anywhere, and I was in this circle of, why can't I get a better job? Why can't I get this? Why can't I get this? And it's because I felt dead inside. I mean, I was exercising and eating right, but I was hating myself. I would get up to pee in the middle of the night, as you do when you drink, and it just it you the what I would tell myself over and over and over again was, you're horrible. Why did you drink? Why did you choose that? Why did you choose that? And I think to myself, would I talk to my children this way? Never. But
Right.
I kept talking to myself in such a harmful, horrible way. I just couldn't stop that cycle. And so I tried, talking to myself nicer, but there wasn't anything nice to say. I was still constantly making a bad decision. So how nice could I talk to myself? If I was treating myself like a child, I would say, get your act together, girl, because
Yeah.
you're going down the wrong path. So I try to treat myself and think how I would be towards my children. I would be kind to them, but I would tell them, you are doing something wrong. You've got to change. And so I have to do that progressively as
Right.
years go on, days, whatever.
Well, it's such a beautiful idea, really, to treat yourself as if you would treat your children, because both on the side of just caring for them, we talk about loving our bodies, and especially as women and with weight loss and everything, like we've equated that to being sexy and or
Right.
feeling attractive. And that's just not true. We don't love our children's bodies because, they're attractive. We don't love our kids because they're cute or because they're good
Right.
at sports. We love our kids because they exist, because they are.
Right.
And I think that we
Hmm.
need to love ourselves because we exist, because this body kind of houses ourselves. And I say it all the time, and I'll say it again, but we didn't create ourselves. So we think we have this um, permission to treat ourselves badly than we would even treat a stranger. But we didn't make ourselves, and
Right.
so who gave us that permission? Like, we don't have that
Right.
permission. We can't treat ourselves
Right.
badly. It's not
That's a
it's
good
not
point.
cool. um,
Right. Exactly.
you've been so just amazing and vulnerable, but I want to ask you a little bit more about sex, because one of the things I think, especially like getting in the mood and everything else, you're like, okay, I remember, like, let's have a few glasses just to make sure things are
I just missed
all
that.
ready. And then
Right.
so how is it, like, for me? And I'll just tell my story first, loosen things up. But certainly there was some apprehension there. There was like, okay, well, you know, I've been having sex with wine for as long as I've been married. Let's just be
Yes.
real. And but then after that, like, I've been really, blown away by alcohol as an anesthetic. So just put
Mm-hmm.
those two together, right? So
Right. Right.
actually, from a purely physical standpoint, yeah, sure, maybe you have to get into the mental thing. You got to overcome that a bit. But from a physical standpoint, at least in my opinion, it certainly is way better than it's ever been before. Like, there's no kind of, as women, it's not as easy as it is for men to
Right.
kind of, feel great.
Right.
Um, and I found that that has become just infinitely easier wushout drinking. But I'd love to hear your point of view.
I used alcohol to cut that process of getting to know someone. I used it to, hey, let's just get to this. Let's just get to the business, and that's how I got to know people. And I used it to have sex, basically, And now that I don't have that, I can honestly say I feel sexier. I feel more confident. And because of that, I know what I want now. And I don't want those shallow relationships to occur in my life anymore.
Right.
So that is difficult, because when you are with somebody who's drinking, um, there is that disconnect. But at the same time, I have been able to say no because I wasn't drinking. And before I wasn't able to say no to situations or people that uh, that I was with. I wasn't able to say no, honestly. And I couldn't figure out why. And it's because I was drinking so much I was numbing my thought processes of this isn't a good idea.
Right.
And through that I have noticed people I am not attracted to. And that's what saved me from going down a deep sexual path of stopping one night stands is that now I really desire a connection with someone more than a physical level. The sex and the alcohol combined together stopped me from going anywhere else but the sex and alcohol.
Right.
I mean, I've had so many sex alcohol drinks, I should write a book, but
Yeah, you
that
should.
got
That'd be
me
awesome.
nowhere. That got me nowhere. And I crave so much more, and I'm worth so much more. Um, you know, I just went from step A to Z, and there's so much more about me. And what I was getting from these people was so surfacey, but then I look at it, what I was giving was so surfacey too.
Right.
So how can I expect more from someone if I'm only given the surfacey stuff? So I had to examine the fact that, I did try dating online and putting it out there. Hey, I'm not going to drink. But is that really the key? You go through this phase of what's going to work for me. Are people going to see me as a loser because I don't drink? Or what are people going to do? And I go back and forth and see what works for me at the time. But I've made a conscious decision not to drink. And if my whoever I'm with decides to drink, that's okay too, because I really can only be in charge of myself. But now because I don't drink, I make really healthy decisions. One thing too that's scary is that I had no idea how many times I probably drove with alcohol in my system. And now that I go on dates, there are some times when I've said to people, let me drive you home.
Right.
And if I was drinking, I wouldn't have noticed that.
Right.
And everybody's drinking and driving, and it's mind blowing. I just wasn't aware of that before.
I
So,
think half of the accidents, if I'm getting the statistic right, are alcohol related. Half of the auto accidents fatal.
at our school, we had some prisoners come from who were in prison, and they spoke to our students about drinking and driving. And both of these participants were in prison because they had killed people drinking and driving. And it made a huge impact on me listening to them. It was great for the students, but these were people who were 25-year-old people making six figures. They had it going on. And you look at these people and they were going in the right direction, but they chose not to do anything that I haven't done. That really scared me.
Right.
They left a company party and drove home and killed people. One of them was a teacher and drove home after a school function and killed a family. They've done nothing that I pretty am sure that we've all done before. They just weren't so lucky.
Right.
And I just don't want to be that person. That made an impact on me. I just, how they got to where they were is no different than me sitting at home drinking. I
Right.
just wasn't different than those prisoners. They just were just like me.
It was
So,
just some, it's so true. I mean, what you're saying is so powerful. I think that one thing that you said earlier that I just want to skip back to, because I heard this yesterday, is, if and we can put this in a food context too, is you're talking about surface level, right? Like what you give is really surface, what you get back is really surface. And you can think of that like fast food, right? Like, sure, you can go through McDonald's and you can quickly get some food and it can fill you up, but how much nutrients is in there? How much, but it's quick and it's easy and doesn't take a lot of effort and you don't have to put any time into it. And then you think about like a really healthy home cooked meal, right? Like that takes time. That takes effort.
yes. And
You have to
money.
go to the grocery
Mhm.
store and pick the food and buy the stuff, right? But then what you get
Yes.
out of that is just so much better for your body and frankly for your soul, because you feel really good about yourself when you've made something home cooked for your kids and your family, or even just yourself. And I think that that really is true for so many things. Like we live in this culture of just quick fixes. We're in a quick fix culture. And whether it's, I remember I used to run a lot and exercise, and I really relied on that to help deal with my anxiety and depression. And then I started drinking, and then it was all of a sudden, okay, well that's easier. That's a quick
Right,
fix, right?
right.
And then,
Yes.
but
Yes.
actually, it's really not a long-term fix. It's just really not. And I think what you're embarking on is, you're saying I'm worth it. I am worth it, and I'm going to find somebody like, and it's not going to be a quick fix. It's not going to be overnight. You're not going to, Prince Charming walk in, who knows? But it's going to be this thing where, in your heart, you're waking up in the middle of the night, going to the bathroom, knowing that you're doing the right thing for yourself now. And I mean, that's just got to feel
Yeah.
amazing, right?
It does. I feel 10 times smarter. I don't feel like I'm hiding. I don't feel like I'm shameful deep down inside. I just don't feel any of that shame that was associated with it. And, the shame is associated with the food too. I had to quit eating and cooking junk food when I had kids. So I just decided to do the same thing I did with food with the alcohol. I don't want any shame. You have to make so many decisions. I don't want my decisions to lead to shame. I really don't. I want them to be proud. I want to be proud of myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
I
so
think that
profound.
alcohol was just the next step of cutting toxic things out of my life.
That's so awesome. I know
Thanks.
if we all could just understand, this just one simple thing that, like, sure, alcohol picks you up a little bit when you first drink it, because it numbs your crazy brain, it numbs your mind, it numbs your body. If you
Right.
it makes you, if you're feeling any sort of anxiety or whatever, that gets numbed, and so you feel better. But then, as that very first drink goes away, you go below par, below zero,
Yes.
right? And then the next
Right.
one will pick you up, but it can't pick you up as far as that first one. And then as that goes away, and we deal with most of the withdrawal when we're sleeping, because mostly we drink in the evenings. And so most of
Yes.
that really negative like feelings of withdrawal is when we're sleeping, and then we wake up the next morning not feeling that great. We drink, I mean, I was like wine all night, coffee all day, wine all night. That was like what was happening in my life.
Right.
But if we could just understand that that first drink at the end of the day feels so good because it's addressing how bad the last night's drinking made us feel. I mean, that
Right.
is the
It's
crux
pushing the
of it.
last nights out and filling you the next one. It's just this circle of last night's junk, let's put more in. You know
And
what I noticed something interesting too that I would do? I would make myself a drink and then I would go off and do something. Just the making of the drink decreased my anxiety so much. I
right,
would go back and be like, where's my drink? I hadn't even taken a sip.
right.
It was just the actual telling my brain, I'm going to make a drink and do it. And that's where I knew that my brain was so powerful that it taught me to relax just by pouring it before I'd even had a couple sips, and I would go off and do something and then come back to it,
Oh
which I
yeah.
thought was really cool.
No, that's totally, I
So
had the exact same epiphany. Like it was, I remember we had this place in my house where I kept the box of wine and kept the wine glasses. And I'd walk out of my office because I was working at home for this big corporation I was working for, walk out of my office, open it, pour the wine, and I would feel better then. So my
yeah,
brain made me feel
interesting.
better then, like that sense of
Yes,
anticipation. It was well before the first sip. And certainly the
yes,
first sip, you're like, it doesn't have any mental effects then, right? Like you're
right,
just,
right.
it's really just this placebo thing. And placebo
Yeah,
is so strong, it can make people, break out in poison ivy who haven't been touched with poison ivy. Like there's so
right.
many
Right.
studies about the placebo effect. But
One
so
thing that stopped me for a little bit, I'm gonna tell you, I got no drinking, but I still had that little corner in my kitchen that looked pretty with the wine bottles and the wine glasses and the little stuff. And it wasn't until I removed all that from my house that it really did a mind switch for me. Just
yeah,
seeing that over there, and it looked pretty, and I was gonna have it for guests. But then I thought, if it's not good for me, it's not good for anybody that I love. And so if they want to bring their own drinks, they can. But once I got rid of all of that paraphernalia, that's when it finally clicked that I was a non-drinker and I never have to be again.
yeah. I remember the first year I quit drinking, it was my son's, like, oh gosh, I think it was his third birthday. And he, like, I made this huge thing of sangria because I was like, I just want everybody to feel comfortable. Like, I know that I'm not drinking, but I want everybody to feel comfortable. So I made virgin sangria and regular sangria, and it was like this big deal and whatever. So everybody felt really good. And then, by his fourth birthday, I was like, kid's birthday party. Like, nobody, like, whatever. Like, if you want to
Right,
bring your own booze to my kid's birthday party, fine. And then by this year, it was
right.
his sixth birthday, and somebody did. They know me well enough. She brought her own. She brought her own to the birthday party. I'm like, that's cool. Power to you. But that's hilarious.
Yeah,
But you have to understand, like, most of my friends, they're not going to pick up my book because it's just kind of this thing. Like, you're not, I don't know what it is, but it's just one of those things that I can count the number of people, close friends
when
of
you're
mine, who have
healthy,
read my book in one hand. So,
yeah. When you're healthy, seeing people who you know, seeing people that make you reflect, I'm not as healthy, it doesn't feel good to be around those people. So,
No, not at all.
you know,
So I have
I'm
one more
okay.
question
There's
for
more.
you. And this has been, I mean, Michelle, like you are just vibrant. You're glowing.
Oh,
You make me happy to talk to. It's been really a
thanks.
pleasure. What would you say to the Michelle of, before the Michelle that was freaked out of not having your friend and not having your crutch and not having your relaxation and all those things? What would you say to her now on this side of the fence?
Oh, that question gives me chills because I feel sorry for her. I would just tell her to love herself, love yourself, and just don't give up. And if one thing doesn't work, just try another and another and another because the exhaustion you feel that it takes to get free is not as painful as the exhaustion you feel beating yourself up in the cycle. It's just not, you know. It just this, it's like a battered person. The bruises just don't show up anymore. You just get so used to things. I just didn't realize how bad it was for me. And, you know, I don't know. I would just go back to my old self and hug myself and tell me that, you're going to do it and you've done it with other things in your life. And you know what? Just, stop the bitching and just do it.
And then life
I
on
did.
this side, what is it like?
Um, this side is peaceful. It really is peaceful. I feel like I wake up in the morning and I am who I'm meant to be.
Hmm.
I'm not hating yesterday. I'm totally over yesterday because I'm ready to face today. And I woke up going through yesterday, hating myself for yesterday, hating myself for the day before, and getting drugged back and back and back. And that part of me was just depression, depression, depression. And the part of your book I love is it's a depressant. Why I can't imagine why you're depressed. I'm just depressing myself every single day. You know, and I would think what addiction is going to surface today? Is it going to be the sex? Is it going to be the food? Is it going to be the alcohol? Once I cut the alcohol out, the other stuff became manageable. It really did. The alcohol fed all those other addictions. I wasn't going to eat, so I was going to drink, which is just taking your carbs from a drink and not eating. I was going to not have sex, so then I would drink. And it's just this what addiction's going to win today? And I just, that once the alcohol stopped, or, once I stopped drinking, there were no other addictions to feed. So I feel like this is this was the starter of stopping all the other addictions.
Oh, it's so
So
awesome. It gives me chills. Gives me chills. It's
thanks.
so cool. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being here.
Oh,
Thank you for your vulnerability.
thank you.
It's been
Thanks. It was nice
awesome.
to meet you.
Yeah,
Keep
so
going,
nice to meet
girl.
you too.
Thanks.
This has been Annie Grace with This Naked Mind podcast. Thank you so much for listening. You can learn more at thisnakedmind.com. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe as it really helps us spread the word.